Tony, thank you so much for being on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast. It's been in the making for a while, and I'm really excited actually that we have done it after that I had a chance to meet you and attend one of your trainings, which was so pivotal for me, even after some time in the world of memory training. And it was just a delight and an honor to learn from you directly. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for being on my course, and thank you for having read so many of my books, and thank you for being such a good beacon, really, for other people who need to follow the development of their own mental literacy and the empowerment of their memories, their mind mapping skills, their reading and speed reading, their study skills, their mind-body coordination. You're a lovely example.
Well, thank you for saying that. And, you know, it kind of circles back to you because I remember in high school first just being fascinated by your name and the covers of your books, and they're really adventures to get into once you're in there. They're so unique because of that, and I know that there's ideas behind how that you even design your books to make them feel that way. So it was it's just amazing how the world works and how fate puts you in certain places.
It does, doesn't it? It was it's almost odd that when I was in school, I didn't like school work, I didn't like homework, I didn't like taking notes, I didn't like studying. And so you would think that the person who has written books on studying and thinking would have loved it, but he didn't. And that is actually the beginning of my journey, because I began to realize that the way that I was being taught in my school, like in many other hundreds of thousands of schools, I was being taught in a way that turned me off my brain, tuned my brain out, and I tuned it out very well. I trained myself very cleverly to become stupid, and I was very successful.
Well, talk about that a little bit. What do you define as stupid, and how did that feel?
I think probably stupid, which is a word that ideally should not need to be used anywhere. It means being unable to use the natural skills and intelligences with which the brain is gifted. We are, i.e. we humans, are astonishingly brilliant, beautifully, multiply intelligent. And when the brain is given misinformation, because it learns so fast, and when it believes people who tell it what it is, when they are told things that are wrong and they believe them, then they train themselves to become less intelligent. And I did that brilliantly. And it was aggravating because, you know, I dreamt of being bright. I dreamt of being successful. I wanted to be. And yet I would do poorly on certain exams. I couldn't remember the dates in history. I couldn't remember the formulas in chemistry and physics. And I began to think I was stupid. And that perhaps was the only stupid thought I had. That we are all basically naturally brilliant. And it started me on the journey, because when I began slowly to realize that I am actually brighter than I think I am, that my studying methodology was not only not helpful, it was the opposite of being successful. It helped me get worse and worse.
What was the tipping point where that enabled you to have a change of mind and set you on the path to thinking more positively and starting to learn in a more optimal way, and then design optimal learning strategies?
Yeah, there were a number of tipping points. One was my best friend. We were 7 years old, and my best friend and I only loved nature. That was our main hobby. And my best friend could identify the flight patterns of any butterflies or birds, and he could identify them, machine gun-like accuracy. And I would be saying, that's a sparrow, that's a cabbage-white butterfly. But in school, he was called stupid because he was illiterate, he was innumerate, he was dyslexic. But I didn't know those terms existed. He was just my brilliant friend. And I began to think, hold on, how can they possibly be calling this best friend of mine stupid, and sometimes calling me quite bright, when I knew that he knew more than I knew about nature? So that was tipping point one. Another major tipping point was the fact that when I was at university, I went into the library because I was panicking about exams. And I thought, I've got to find out how to use my brain. And I walked into the library, and I said to the librarian, I need a book on how to use my brain. And she pointed to the medical section and said, medical section's over there. And I thought, what? I don't want to take my brain out. I don't want to operate on it. I want to know how to operate it. And she said, oh, there are no books on that. And that made me think, what? Whatever I buy, whether it's a packet of aspirins or a little radio or a washing machine or a car, what do I get? Operations manual. And for this delightful, extraordinary gift, our brain, no operations manual. And that's when I began to write. So thank you for your kind words about the covers on the books. Because once I wrote one book, people were asking for another book. And my first book, Use Your Head, which really was the operations manual, was really written for me and my brother and my friends. And, it included chapters on memory, chapters on creativity, on reading, on speed reading, on studying, on note-taking, on the origination of mind maps. And that book, another tipping point, people said, Tony, don't write that book, because as soon as you've written it, everybody will copy it, will learn from it, and you won't have any more books to write. And it was exactly the opposite. I wrote that book, Use Your Head, and as soon as people and publishers had read it, they would write to me and say, you've got a chapter here on memory. Why don't you do a full book on memory? And I'd say, yeah, okay. And sure enough, within a few months, people were saying, that chapter in Use Your Head on mind maps, why don't you have a book on mind maps? So I thought, yeah, okay. And then when I'd written the mind map book, which was the child of Use Your Head, people read the mind map book and said, have you done a book for children on mind maps? And I said, no. Some of it's in the book. And they said, no, a full book just for kids. So I said, yeah, okay. Publisher came up and said, could you do 3 mind map books for kids? One on mind maps, the introduction, one on mind maps memory, one on mind maps for studying. So every book gave birth to more books. And as you and I are speaking right now, I am on book number 142. And I'm sitting in my garden, and for this afternoon, I've been working on 2 books, and in the next hour, I'm going to be meeting with a designer and co-designer, co-editor this evening to work on another book.
Well, this is incredible, and it reminds me and connects me to some other things that I wanted to ask you, because you've written about multiple intelligences. You were a huge figure in developing that field, and I think that not enough people really recognize how, or at least in the material I've read, how that you actually are a demonstration of all these multiple intelligences, because it's not just about books, right? You have
Yes.
written books, but you've been responsive to the audience that wanted more books, but not just through books. You've gone into various parts of media, such as television, and then you've produce software for people and are using the internet in creative ways, and the mind map itself, the things you've done is art, and you've also been a proponent of art itself. You brought beautiful art to the training that I attended, and it's just incredible, and then you turn people into artists. So just how do you explain your interest in all of this and the energy that keeps you going and enables you to do it? I know it's multiple intelligences, and I know that it comes down to things that you've classified, creativity, personality, the social and the spiritual and the physical and so forth. But a lot of people just see this from a person like yourself, and they're like, where's the alpha here? Where do we begin,
Yeah, it's a lovely question, because it's a question worth me thinking about. Because when I was a 7-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old boy, I was a kind of good, above average kid, but I was poor in the sports. I was virtually hopeless with art. Socially, I was fairly good, but not fully aware of how to get on with other people. And I gradually began to realize, for example, with my social intelligence, I began to become very attracted to young girls. And the spark in my eyes started when I was about 5, right? But I didn't know anything about that. And by the time I was 12, most of my other male friends became interested in girls, and so did I. And I began to think, well, I want to get a good girlfriend, so I better get strong. So I then went into the gym, and I learned how to run, I learned how to swim, I learned how to build my muscles, because I wanted to be a good guy on the beach that girls would find attractive because of my good built-up body. My biceps, my six-pack. And I was at a party, and I developed my verbal intelligence, so I was pretty good at that stage of talking, fairly good at writing, and I was getting strong. And so I thought the girls would immediately, gravitate towards me. And I noticed that some kids who were not doing well in school, not doing well in sports, but they were funny. They were telling good jokes. They were making people laugh. And girls would go more for them than they went for me. And I thought, how can they be possibly more interested in an unfit kid doing badly in school when I'm doing now well in school and I'm strong? And it quickly dawned on me that being humorous, having a sense of humor, was a massive creative and social intelligence. And I thought, well, I better build up the package. Better learn how to tell some jokes, learn how to be funny, learn how to make a fool of myself, not trying to be so clever and so good and so always top. And so over the years, and it was years, I began to realize about multiple intelligences. And then my hero in my early teens and throughout the teens and the rest of my life was Leonardo da Vinci. Who would I really like to be? Because sometimes, people, teachers are saying, who would you like to be? And I was thinking, well, who would I like to be? Would I like to be a fabulous artist? Yes, I would. Would I like to be a physically fit man? Yes, I would. Would I like to be an architect? Yes, I would. Would I like to be an astronomer? Yes, I would. Would I like to be a sculptor? Yes, I would. Would I like to be a top scientist? Yes, I would. And of course, they were all wrapped into Leonardo da Vinci. So he became my hero, and I began to study him, and as any kid does, trying to copy my hero. So that was part of my journey into multiple intelligences and some of the tipping points in my life that led me to where I am. And I now know, it's not even just think, I know that nearly every kid on the planet can develop into this multiply intelligent, wonderful human being.
It seems like there's a bit of a code that can be extracted from what you've said, which is essentially becoming an observer of your desires and observing the observation and then figuring out a way to take action. Would that be fair to say?
That would be a good beginning summary. In fact, Leonardo said something dead on that. He said, I'll put this into different words, but basically what Leonardo was saying was, look, guys, don't keep calling me an artist. I'm not just an artist. I am more than that. Just the word artist means a surface level, somebody with paintbrushes who paints. He said, but I am a student of nature. And what I do is I notice that people don't look and don't see. But we need to look and see. So he said, I am simply a student of nature. I, Leonardo, I'm a student of nature, and I observe her. And when I observe her, I study her, I analyze her, I remember her, I copy her, and then I add to whatever she's given me. And that is action. And that's what he did. He would go into the woods, into the fields, and he would observe flowers or animals, and he would observe them. He would then study them, he'd analyze them, he'd measure them, he would then copy them, and when he copied them, that helped him remember them. And when he copied and copied, say, this kind of flower or this kind of face, he would then begin to change it in his own mind's way. Those were his actions. A total genius. And if anybody wants to learn to draw, copy Leonardo. Because he said, copy nature. So go out there and learn how to copy. It's wonderful.
Well, I think a common idea that we come up with, and it certainly is in the air already, is that something about the way that we are put into schools, interrupts this process that you were just talking about, which is so elegant and simple and has certainly helped you lead an incredible life that has changed so many lives. And, I don't know, sometimes one wants to point the finger at the Victorian sort of nature of the school education system that has somehow made its way into the 21st century. But where do you see things now? I mean, what do we do to help people, regardless of why, if it's the school or they're not eating properly or however things are playing out in their lives? How do we help people participate in this procedure that you described so beautifully into what you have called, actually, to quote you, a mentally literate planet? At the core of things, how do we get this to more people?
Good question, and an immediate answer is what you are doing now. You've got a podcast. You are contacting tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions of people, and you are spreading global mental literacy. That's one wonderful way to do it. Another is to be a teacher, but a real teacher. You know, a teacher who is a beacon to a child, a teacher who is someone who launches the child on the exploration of their internal universe. You know, a teacher is a harvester of questions and sows the answers. So being a teacher is a wonderful, most important profession. Mind mapping is another way, and let me give you the hot off the presses 2 bits of information. We are now approaching the beginning of August. August 19th is the day, right? It's a global mental literacy day. And on that day, 2 things are going to happen. Number one, I have just been nominated and going to be given the Toastmaster Award. The Toastmaster organization has 15,000 members in 135 countries. And their simple goal for each individual Toastmaster is to learn how to present and to learn how to become confident. And as soon as someone learns how to speak publicly, and obviously mind maps are a wonderful way to do that, and as soon as they do that, they then become more confident. And when they get to that stage, all they have to do is to help another person do the same. So it's like a wonderful positive brush fire, a positive viral. And the Toastmasters have given me, are going to give me, the Golden Gavel Award in Washington, D.C. on August 19th this year. And I will be speaking to 2,000 people from 135 countries, and all of them know about mind mapping, and they are anointing me as a new leader for them to help the planet learn how to communicate and how to give birth to more leaders. Because people who can communicate and are confident and know how to think can help the world. So on that day, the 19th, I'm going to be given that award and will be connected to 15,000 people who believe in human beings and believe that helping them to help each other, how to communicate, how to learn, and how to become a leader, that's an ultimate global goal. So please come to Washington and be with me there. Now, on that same day, that day is now also going to be announced as the World Mind Map Day. Because, you know, there are mind map days for football and global days for golf and global days for politics, whatever. But this is the World Mind Map Day on August 19th. And on that day, the goal is for every mind mapper on this planet, and there are already well over 300 million mind mappers. The goal is to have every mind mapper get as many mind maps out in as many ways as possible. So, for example, you know, if you're an individual who mind maps, and you don't do an enormous number of big things, But you could get mind maps on your Skype, on your Twitter, on your Facebook. You could put mind maps on your car. When you go into a restaurant, you could give them a fabulous mind map to stick on the window. You could put mind maps on billboards. You could give them to schools, give them copies, send them virtually. If you've got a little database, of 1,000 or 10,000 people, send them mind maps to every one of them saying, welcome to the World Mind Map Day. And on my Twitter homepage is at Tony_Buzan in small letters. So at Tony_Buzan. The World Mind Map is there, so you could retweet that. So it's going to be like a supernova. It's going to explode mental literacy around the world. And I am really happy with that, because in this modern age, despite the fact that the information age has given us a lot of information overload, it can do wondrous things. And one of the things it can do is to spread good news to every brain, igniting every brain to become aflame with the beauty, the magnificence of the human mind.
Well, this is absolutely true, and I'm glad that you raised the topic of people, just getting their own podcast or getting out there and tweeting at whatever level that they can to help spread the good news about these techniques and about the people who are really expert at explaining them.
Yeah, and the power of podcast is a good phrase. You could use that, the power of podcast, because it's very powerful. If you, for example, Anthony, influence one person on one interview you have, and that person transforms the world. It might have been a little Thomas Edison. It might have been a little Maria Montessori. It might have been, a little Mandela. It could have been any child who you influenced and ignited. Then one podcast with one person changed and evolving. Be wonderful.
I just wanted to tell you, just to make a concrete example for people, and I should really give a shout out to someone special. I'm here in Tel Aviv, and I have this podcast, and I have been, I don't know, maybe we came into connection because you were in British Columbia where I grew up, so maybe there was something in the air with that. But, having grown up with your influence and then learning all this time, and I in Tel Aviv, and I just let people know on my podcast and through my email that I'm here, and a guy named Eldon Clem emails me. He's in Jerusalem, and we haven't managed to connect yet, but I really want to meet him because he's taken my training that he found out because that I spread the word about these things. And I'm like almost choking up here because he emailed me and he said that what I've done has changed how he teaches Semitic languages. And I talked to him over a year ago, and he told me that he memorized 1,000 words in 6 weeks of ancient Ethiopic, right? And this is a very difficult language where the words have, 3 letters. And then he said, it was no problem, though. I just then went on to read 1,000 words, and then I just started incorporating your stuff into my classes. And now I hear that he's even using the Memory Palace as a technique to give quizzes. So this is how the lineage works, from me seeing your books as a kid in British Columbia to ultimately getting to meet you and already having had the podcast in action, and then somebody gets involved in my stuff, and then they start passing it on to students, and he said they're getting great success because it enables them in the testing period. So just want to take this opportunity to give a concrete example of that's happening right now, and I hope to meet him and let him know that I spoke with you, and it's amazing what can happen.
Wonderful. I mean, your story links in with the World Memory Championships. because that was just an idea that I had many decades ago. You know, why are there tiddlywink championships? Why are there chess championships, high jumping championships, long jumping championships, weightlifting championships? You name it, there's a championship, and nothing on memory. And I thought, we've got to have a World Memory Championships. And I discussed that, and people said, Buzan, you must be crazy. What's the point of having a memory competition? Nobody will be interested in that. And this year, it's the 25th World Memory Championships. It's the Jubilee year, number 25, and there are tens of thousands of competitors, and there are multiple grandmasters of memory spreading around the world, and all the people in the World Memory Championships, like you, Anthony, are busting all the barriers that are placed around the human brain. You know, it's like balustrades, pickets that are staked around the human brain, and it is fenced in like a trapped animal, when in fact, when the brain knows how to think and knows how to remember, knows how to learn, knows how to be intelligent, it'll break all those barriers. So, and I'm sure you're going to be at the World Memory Championships this year, which are now going to be in Singapore this year, December 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, World Memory Championships. Please let me and you invite everybody from your podcast group, team, come to Singapore.
Let's do it, and maybe you can help make it concrete for people. What is the number one, or, you know, by all means add more than one if it comes to mind, but what would you say is the top benefit of participating in the World Memory Championships for someone who already is feeling that sense of resistance, like I could never go? Like, what's the tipping point for them to get in there and just give it a try?
One of the great events in your life was when you compete, you will naturally meet all the greatest memorizers in the world. You'll meet every grandmaster. You will meet Dominic O'Brien, the 8-time world memory champion, who was a kid in school who was told, you will never succeed, you can't remember, you can't concentrate, you're useless, get out of this school. And he became 8-time world memory champion because he suddenly realized, oh, they say I'm stupid, but I'm not. And so if you went to the memory championships, you'd meet all the people. You'd meet me, because I would be there. You'd meet Anthony Metivier. I mean, what a wonderful opportunity. You'd be meeting people who would charge something like 1,000 or 2,000 pounds an hour for their time. And you'd be meeting them as new friends. It'd be like going into the United Nations, where all the presidents of the countries were coming together, and you just be with them. Same in the memory championships. And as soon as you competed, you would learn that your memory, no matter how poor and weak and bad you think it is, it's powerful, and all you need is the correct formulas for unlocking the doors of your genius. I mean, it would be worth... Well, I've asked people sometimes, you know, how much would I have to pay you to promise that you would obliterate your memory of the World Memory Championships? You just wipe out your memory of it. So if you met all the world champions and the national champions and all the best memorizers, and they taught you how to remember, and you met all the top competitors in the world, and you met Tony Buzan and Anthony Metivier and Grandmaster Raymond Keane, the ultimate chess, mind sports, Times journalist and writer, how much would you pay? How much would I have to pay you if you promised to forget all of it? And people said, no matter how much you pay me, I would choose to remember it all. It's changed my life. It would destroy me if I forgot all that I now know about memory. My new friend, Dominic O'Brien. So people would, and they have said, if you offered me £100,000, I would still say no. It's priceless. Mm. That's how important it is.
Well, I feel the same way about having attended your training. I mean, you couldn't pay its way out of my memory. It's just too valuable, too valuable.
Yeah, I mean, and thank you for saying that, because if you and all the people on the podcast here said, listen, Buzan, we'll give you £1 trillion, if you promise that you will never use a mind map again, you will never use anything in your books. You won't use your speed reading, you won't use your studying skills, you won't use your creativity, you won't use your multiple intelligences, but we'll give you £1 trillion. I would say, you must be mad. What's the point of wiping my brain out for £1 trillion? My brain is infinitely valuable.
Absolutely. One of the things that I want to point out, is that I went to the training that I went to as someone who already uses the techniques, and I'm just so devoted to learning as much as I possibly can, and I was just blown away, not only by how little that I know, but how little that I knew about what I know, if I can put it that way.
Oh. Well, there is that kind of a common saying in most cultures, including the Arabic culture, Japanese, Chinese, European cultures, that the common saying is, the more you know, the less you know. And that is a complete misinterpretation of what actually everybody meant. The real saying is, the more you know, the more you know. Mm. And the more you know that there is even more to know than you thought you would have to know.
Right. That is a much more empowering and profound and useful way of using that phrase.
And so I now know that I know a lot more than I ever knew before. And I know that now that I know all that, I now know that there are an infinite number of other things I don't yet know and would love to know. Many people are saying about old age, people say, I don't want to be old. I don't want to be over 80. It would be terrible. My brain would rot, and I don't want to learn anymore. My brain is stuffed, which is sadly tragic, because the fact is that the human brain can learn an infinite number of things. And therefore, I want to live forever. Because would I like to be a concert-level violinist? Yes, I would. Would I like to be a concert-level pianist? Of course I would. Would I like to be a brilliant gymnast? Of course I would. Would I like to be an Olympic-level swimmer? Of course I would. Would I like to be a best-selling novelist of detective stories like Sherlock Holmes? Of course I would. Would I like to be a top children's author with 100 books? Of course I would. Would I like to go to every country? Of course I would. Would I like to spend years in each country, in different cities? Would I like to spend 10 years in Paris, learning French cuisine, learning French philosophy, French poetry, French literature, French music? Of course I would. How many years is that going to take me? Trillions of years. Trillions of years. I would love to live forever. Every day of my life is wonderful. Even when I'm in pain or sad or depressed or melancholic, contemplating suicidal thoughts, I would far rather be alive than not.
Let's go in this direction a little bit. How do you deal with those challenges that you've just mentioned, the dark times? We get this impression always these super incredible intellects, they just have it all and live in paradise, but it's not the case. So what do you do? How do you use your multiple intelligences to deal with the downsides?
Yeah, when I'm down, I explore the bad. For example, if I give you a simple example about having nightmares, let's say things are going pretty awfully. Friends are dying, personal situations are difficult, sickness or illness causes nightmares, and people wake up screaming in the middle of the night, with monsters devouring them or whatever. Rather than waking up screaming and trying to block out the nightmares, I now think, because I used to try to stop them, but then I began to think, hold on a minute, among the most popular movies on the planet are horror movies. Horror movies. And how much do they cost to make? $250 million to make one horror movie. What is my nightmare like? It's a lot better than that one $250 million movie. It's fabulous. It's got monsters in it that I have never even imagined before. It's got unbelievable pain. It's got, all the horrors. So I now think, wow, what a great story that is. What a great poem that will be. Like the American author Poe, Alexander Poe, his horror stories, he got those from his nightmares. Wonderful. When I recently had a big molar wisdom tooth taken out, which was infected, broken, so it was, literally a bloody mess. And I was asked to take paracetamol or any other painkiller to prevent the pain, because for 2 days it would be really painful after the numbness disappeared from the 8 needles I had to have. And I said, no, I'm not going to take any painkiller, because pain is information. It's a friend of mine. My mouth is telling my brain, I am in agony. I am bleeding. I am ripped apart. I am in asunder. I'm still bleeding. And I'm trying to tell you, Tony, please look after me. Rinse me. Listen to me. Hear me. And so I had all-night conversations with pain. And what was fascinating was that the pain in my mouth was a giant pulse. Whoomph, whoomph, whoomph. Why? Because the blood was pumping, and it was all open and damaged. And it was whoomph, whoomph. And the more I got into it, the more it was like a wonderful music. Rumph, rumph. And sure enough, after 5 hours of listening to that, I went to sleep. Sent to sleep by my pain. When I went sculling, rowing, sculling in the morning, I was told do not do any big exercise for 2 days because it will break open all the sealing. But on the third day I went sculling, and every time I put my oars in the water, where I took all the strain, boom. And every time I took a stroke, my mouth, my crater, went boom, boom, boom. So it was telling me exactly the moment that I put all my effort into rowing. Stroke, stroke, row, row, and it was in my mouth. I mean, it was phenomenal.
Rowing has been a fascination of yours and something you've been deeply involved in for a long time. Where did that begin, and how has it been that it fascinated you so deeply that you still do it to this day? You did it even the morning before you came into the training that I attended.
Yeah, I fell in love with it because I saw a superb male athlete sculling in a single boat. And, in your life you suddenly see things, and it's pretty well the same for everybody. Everybody sees something, and they, wow, I want to be like that. And I just saw this athlete sculling, and it was the most beautiful sport I had ever seen. And I just thought, I want to do that. I want to be able to skim across the water like one of those fabulous insects that skims across the water. I wanted to do that, with all my gymnastic muscles rippling, but not kind of solid, more flowing. It was wonderful. And I did it this morning. This morning, I rowed 4,000 meters. This morning, on the River Thames.
Wow. Well, I remember you telling us that your doctors said you were definitely in prime territory to keep going for a long, long, long time to come. What?
Yeah, I'll invite all the podcast people. Put in your diaries, guys. June 2nd, 2042. 2nd of June, 2042. That's my 100th birthday. Make sure you come.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait for it.
What I would love to do is to do another podcast with you.
Oh, I would love that as well. And it's just the time has gone so fast, and I really appreciate that you've been able to be here. So, if I could ask one last question before we go,
Fire away.
What in your future do you feel is your biggest challenge? And as a person with so many tools to tackle them, what is your number one tool for tackling that challenge?
That's another book of a question. The greatest challenge to this planet is the destruction of intelligence. And it can be destroyed in a number of ways. It can be destroyed in schools, where, like, I taught myself to be stupid and I was very successful. Children have to be taught to learn how to learn, and then they will think intelligently, and they will deal with all the future problems, and they will find solutions. That's one. Another threat is technology used in the wrong way. So, for example, when technology is used, consumes all the hours of a day that has people become couch potatoes, diabetic, fat, non-athletic. That's the negative side of technology. Technology, when used well, like you can use mind maps with technology to your advantage. So that's another wonderful threat and opportunity. We must learn how to use technology intelligently. So we have to use information intelligently. We have to use agriculture intelligently. We have to use knowledge intelligently. And we have to use intelligence intelligently. Because the threat is that if we don't use intelligence intelligently, we lose intelligence. And if we lose intelligence, we die. It's as simple as that. Think intelligently or die. It's a big, big threat. Another big threat is the manipulation of thinking. So, for example, in politics, all the arguments are spun. Truth is manipulated. And when truth is distorted, being destroyed, intelligence becomes destroyed. In politics, for example, if there is some wonderful evidence that when people eat a lot of junk food, all the statistics show that the brains in the wombs of pregnant women, the brains in the embryo get destroyed or damaged. And there is masses of incontrovertible information, studies done on hundreds of thousands of pregnant mums. And we know, right, that if someone keeps on stuffing themselves with dangerous food, the body bloats and basically explodes. There are many people who, when they are given information like that, they say, that's what those statistics say. But statistics always lie. I know, I believe that eating all the food that I eat is good for me. I know it. I believe in it. You've got to believe in it. I mean, I am still alive, right? And I may weigh 400 pounds, but so what? I enjoy that food, and those statistics must be wrong. I believe in what I believe. And that is intelligence, hypnotized, mesmerized, and destroyed. It goes blind. So blinding intelligence is another hyper-dangerous threat. And all we got to do is ignite the intelligence, get it working well, and the world will be fine. And we have to work hard to do that. But what we're doing today, what you've been doing, more and more tens of thousands to millions of people are beginning to think about thinking intelligently, which is wonderful. What I've just said wouldn't be true if you had, 1,000 podcast people, because people wouldn't be interested. Mm. But I have never met anybody who isn't interested in intelligence, as long as it's explained properly.
I do hope that you will write a book on the topic and Since you called me a warrior of the mind, I've been thinking that would be an amazing title for a book. So I don't know if that'll trigger anything, but I think it's certainly in line with the solution is for people to become a warrior of the mind. So I am going to do everything that I can to get the people listening now and the people that will find my website in the future also linked up with what you do. And so
Wonderful.
I'm so delighted that you gave me the opportunity to do it with an interview between the two of us, a discussion, and that you have already proposed the next one. So let's definitely get together to talk about that and what more we can do together.
Yeah, well, let's do that after the Mind Map Day. By then we can talk about the results. And the Mind Map Day, the World Mind Map Day, will extend into the Mind Map Week, the Mind Map Month, and the Mind Map Year.
Excellent.
It's going to go on till the end of December.
Well, just that you know and the listeners know, since that I was there, you guys were teaching memory, and I was watching you use mind maps, and you talked about mind map as well as a bonus. And since then, I've created at least 19 and designed more outlines for books than I have time to write over the next 10 years. But just the exercise of like being able to use that to plan out ideas and books and so forth is just so empowering, and I really want as many people as possible.
Welcome to my world, Anthony.
It's a wonderful place to be. And you asked if I could hear birds at the beginning, and at that moment I couldn't, but throughout the interview birds have been audible, and they're going to be in the interview, and so I hope everybody enjoys that as well, because we talked about nightmares, and I said it's not always paradise, but quite frankly it sounds like it is always paradise where you are.
Yeah, we do live in paradise.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Tony Buzan. Absolutely fantastic. I enjoyed every minute of it myself, and I look forward to speaking to him again. And there are so many questions that I have that we didn't get around to because we really hit the ground running in this interview. And, I think that one of the biggest takeaways here is that no matter what personal life challenges that you have, and we all have them, your story is the foundation for your success. You just need to think about it in a different way, and you need some help from time to time, and that can come from people who are available to you right now to train you. And so why not go and find out how to get some training from Think Buzan? And you can just search Think Buzan and find it. You could tweet Tony himself at Tony_Buzan. And when you look him up on Twitter, you can find all the relevant links. All the relevant links will be at magneticmemorymethod.com/Tony-Buzan. And I know that you're going to absolutely love going to the training when you do. And, go to the World Memory Championships. It's going to be a riot. It's going to be a lot of fun. And, on top of that, just start using your mind, your multiple intelligences. You're probably already using more than you think you are. And just by knowing what they are and identifying them, you can optimize them, because that's the ultimate skill, is to really improve whatever it is that you're already doing and then adding new things and improving those too. So I hope that you enjoyed this interview as much as I enjoyed putting it together for you. And I hope that you will be in touch with Tony at Tony_Buzan very, very soon. And thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Magnetic Memory Method podcast. I love very much that you're here. I love all the feedback that I'm receiving, and it really, really does inspire me to keep on going and bringing you material like this. So until we speak again, come on over to magneticmemorymethod.com, click all those like and share buttons and tweets, and be involved. Be involved. It's one of the best ways that you could ever improve your memory, is to learn how to improve your memory, use your improved memory, and then share what you've done with others. And so until we speak again, while you're busy doing all that, come back on over to magneticmemorymethod.com and keep yourself magnetic.